All right, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see all of you again. I also want to welcome, we have a few new participants joining us today. This is our fourth session of the Five Wishes webinar. So for those of you who weren't here in the first few sessions, my name is Pauline Matindan Garcia. I am the Director of Care Transitions for Livingston. And my role is I help our patients and their family navigate their options between palliative care and hospice care to ensure they're receiving the right level of care in the right care setting. I will be moderating this presentation today, as I mentioned, and Terry Helton will be presenting. Before we begin, I'm going to go ahead and just go over a few housekeeping notes as usual. So today's session, once again, is being recorded and it will be posted on our website after the presentation. If you have any questions for Terry during the presentation, you can send me a direct chat or direct question using the chat function on your Zoom box. And my name's Pauline. You can send it to me directly. And let's see here. We will do our best to answer all of the questions during the presentation. We will also post all the questions and answers on our website after the presentation. If you run into any technical issues, feel free to send me a chat as well, a chat message. All right, so without further ado, I'll go ahead and present Ms. Terry Helton.
Evening, everybody. My name is Terry Helton. I'm a registered nurse, and I have worked for Livingston Memorial Visiting Nurse Association for about 12 years. I started as a hospice nurse with the experience of that. Previous to that, though, I had also worked in hospitals and nursing homes and had been an educator for Ventura College. I am privileged to be able to present to the public on end of life and advanced care directives, POLST, and other things regarding end of life. So I am open to questions. And if I don't know the answer, I can find one for you. So we'll start with a little bit of review tonight for what we've been talking about. And I don't spend a lot of time on this review, but just to update us on what the Five Wishes are. The Five Wishes is an advanced healthcare directive. There are many forms of healthcare directives. There is the Five Wishes, the one from the state of California, the one from the Hospital Association. There are Kaiser form specifically, and Cottage Hospital in Santa Barbara has also developed their own form. I could add that there are forms especially for the mentally disabled. So as you can see, it's not the form itself, it's what's in the form. And what's in the form should be who your decision maker is if you become incapacitated and cannot make decisions for yourself. And the wishes that you want, what you do not want, and what you want provided as care if you cannot speak for yourself. And that is what we've been going over for the last few weeks. Not only the agent, we talked about that for the first week, but also what it is you want and don't want. And tonight, we're going to move to wish 4. And as we do that, I would like to remind us that on that page 8 of the Five Wishes, that it talks about what we are doing and the reason you are speaking to those decision makers that you're choosing of what you want and don't want, and that they need to remember that individuals deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, especially when they are unable to speak for themselves. And that following someone's wishes as they have shared them is a way of showing respect and giving dignity. And I kind of want to slip in here a little other statement on that whole idea of dignity. When we choose to have a conversation and to promote the conversation about advanced care planning, we are not only showing dignity for ourselves and respect for ourselves, but we are showing dignity and respect for our family members and friends. And we are also doing an act of love. So starting with the understanding, we want people to understand that I want my loved ones and friends and healthcare providers may not be able to do some of the things that you're asking. And that's really worth part of the conversation. And that they're not required by law to do some things that you may want done. So part of the conversation. And the understanding is that you don't want to add legal or new duties to your healthcare providers, but you do expect them to follow the law, and that you're not going to excuse them for providing poor care, that you want them to provide proper care as required by the law. And we went into that a little bit last week. And this week, we're going to talk about how I want to be treated. And as we're doing that, I wanted to start with this picture about way back, A Testament to Dying. And there was a man called Felipe Aries. He wrote a book back in 1973 regarding the Western attitudes towards death. And he happened to be French, but did all of this study. And what he discovered through the centuries is that the respect for death was huge, ongoing. And in the Middle Ages, the early Middle Ages and into the later Middle Ages, people, of course, died at home back then, but death was treated with a great respect and honor. And the person, as in this picture that is here, this person only has a few people in the room, but it was possible that a person in a village would have a whole community in their room. And I could say as a nurse, that's part of the reason that disease spread so rapidly, but it is also when that person made their wishes known. And prior to making their wishes known about themselves and for their family and the community, they would profess what they felt badly about, what they felt good about, and then they would proceed to ask forgiveness and give forgiveness, and then they would begin to actually give their possessions away. And so this was a normal part of death and dying, and a way that we seem to have forgotten until recent times. So I wanted to precede our talk tonight with that. And also to give you the same idea, in the Victorian age, and I may have said this last week, but in the Victorian age, they wrote about death and dying. They wrote prose, they wrote poetry, they decorated the graveyards. They had a whole set ritual about what clothes you could wear and what clothes you couldn't wear. And they would be glad to talk to you about those things. And then they didn't talk about sex. And now in our day and age, we talk about sex all the time in one way or another, but we don't really want to talk about death and dying. So we've kind of reversed the way things are. And that's why we're here this evening, is to help us go back to the idea that death is part of life and that it is welcome to talk about it with our family and our loved ones and make plans. And to say how you want to be treated before you end up in that deathbed. So I wish to have people with me when possible. And I want to remind us that anything on this page under wish 4, wish 3, you can cross out, you can add to. So I wish to have people with me when possible is what most of us think we want. We want to have people there. But I will also say there are people that do not want to have somebody there, and they may not even know it consciously, but some people would like to have more privacy. And so maybe this would be changed to say, I wish to have people with me when I'm alert and oriented and feel like I'm going to eat a meal and they're going to socialize with me. Or I wish to have people with me on Monday, Tuesday, and Sunday. I am being facetious on those days, but there could be ways of possibly wording this so that their wishes are made known. The second one, I wish to have my hand held and to be talked to when possible, even if I don't seem to respond to the voice or touch of others. Again, this is very specific, and it may be something somebody wants, or maybe something somebody wants only part of the time. I can't help but think of a very close loved one with mine that probably wouldn't want to have their hand held all the time. I want someone with me when it seems that death may come at any time. And we talked about this in the past, that I know my brother-in-law in 2000, waited till I left the room to die. And we talked about that last week. So that is a possibility that somebody could be there the whole time and then they leave the room just for minutes and the person dies. Then I wish to have others by my side praying for me whenever possible. Well, I will say that it's nice to have them by your side, but it's also possible these people could be praying elsewhere and that cards could be received for that. Or if the person wants, they can be by the side praying for them, maybe lighting candles if that's their faith, maybe having tokens of ritual that would mean something to them. I happened to stay in the hospital room with my father-in-law after he'd had a stroke and he was a heart attack and a stroke and he was dying. And I did with him what I knew he liked. And I read the Psalms, and that I know meant something to him. So it can be something very specific. I wish to have the members of my faith community told that I am sick and asked to pray for me and visit me. Again, this is very personal and something that you may want or may not want, depending on your faith and your relationship to your faith community. I do know that in my faith community, we add people to prayer lists, and it's very meaningful, not only to them, but to the people that we are praying for. And those people in the faith community, once you die, are probably going to want to know so they can continue to pray for the family and to meet family needs. So it's something to remember within that. And then I want to be treated with dignity when I lose control of my bowels, my bladder, maybe even other things. And if I'm not able to control them, I'm wishing for my clothes and bed linen to be kept clean. And I don't think anybody's going to cross this one off. And I want to be changed as soon as I possibly can if I've soiled myself in any of these ways. And if my bed is a mess, I want to be cleaned up. I want to be treated with dignity. And as long as I can do anything for myself, and this is where I might add something, as long as I can do anything for myself, I want to be allowed to do that, even if it takes major assistance, because that is showing a way of respect and dignity for myself. But that may not be for you. Just considering that. Then I wish to be cared for with kindness and cheerfulness and not sadness. And this, I think, is something that's important. There's a seriousness to dying, seriousness to serious illness, but there's also a real gift to being able to come in and have quote unquote normal conversation, be able to review memories that are good, to make memories. I heard a story of somebody whose dad was dying, and they ended up doing a whole skit with her dad and taking pictures and celebrating. And it brought such joy to his face. And it actually was pain relieving because he was in such a humorous state that it left lasting positive memories of a dear, dear loved one that was dying. That's not for everybody, but it is something to consider. Then I wish to have pictures of my loved ones in my room near my bed. And this would be a definite thing for me. It may not be for everybody, but for me, it would be something I would really want. I want to die in my home if that can be done. And that is mostly the possibility for everybody. And tonight I had done a little bit review because I expect questions from you sometimes, and I thought I'd be upfront about this. Back in 2000, and this is an older article, it's in the New York Times in 2019. See, that's older, 3 years. It said that in 1912, about 2/3 of residents died at home. And by the 1950s, the majority of Americans died in hospitals. And then in the 1970s, at least 2/3 of people died in the hospitals. And as of currently, we are reversing that trend where more people are dying at home and less people are dying in the hospital. And that is because we are returning control to patients of what they want and they don't want as we help them, and you help yourselves and each other to complete advanced healthcare directives. And more importantly, I'm going to come back to that word again, have the conversation with your loved ones, your physicians, and your friends so that everybody's on the same page about your wishes. So, and I could read a statement in this book that I have about what was happening in the 1970s and physicians taking control and how we have now reversed that. So we are very short this week on this, and I will take questions and answers. But before I do that, I would like to remind us that this other document that I have is called a POLST, P-O-L-S-T, Physician Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. And we are planning to have a class on March 29th at 7 p.m. via Zoom again. So if you're interested, please put that, you can email Linda and let her know, and we will be sending out the information for that. Next week, you don't want to miss, because we are going to be completing the 5 wishes, what I want my loved one to know. And we're going to be talking about what's on the last page, but we're also going to be talking about what makes this a completely legal document and what you should do with it. So you need to come back next week, 7 p.m. Any questions?
I have one question here. Question is, if I don't complete my advanced directive, can I still choose to die at home, or do I have to stay in the hospital?
No, your advanced directive is allowing for a voice for you when you cannot make decisions for yourself medically. So you are still able to stay at home if you are able to make that decision for yourself, or your loved ones know that and are able to arrange that. And also to allow your physicians to know that would be helpful too.
Allison raised her hand. Allison, please feel free to unmute so you can ask your question.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to, I guess, kind of make a comment also. My father-in-law died 2 nights ago.
Oh.
And it was expected, and he was dying of Alzheimer's, but the nurses would talk, even though he was unresponsive, the nurses would talk about his medical condition in front of him. And he, you know, even though he couldn't respond, and I realized, I think that's something I don't want them talking about me as if I'm not there, because I don't know. I mean, is it correct that I assume people, maybe even though they can't talk, or they're, you know, maybe on morphine, doesn't necessarily mean that things aren't going in?
That's correct. You're very correct, Alice. It is, we understand through studies and just understanding that the last thing that a person loses is their hearing, and that it is never, ever appropriate to be talking over a patient about them without them being included in the conversation. It's like treating them as an object, and that's just not appropriate.
That's okay. That's what I got the feeling of. And I thought, I don't want to, it seems like that should be logical, but I think maybe it's not always, huh?
Well, we're all human and we forget. And I really feel badly that you experienced that. And I hope your experiences from here on out are more positive, but my regrets to you for that.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm glad that you clarified that there actually is research that says that the hearing is the last thing. That's very interesting, because I wasn't sure. It just kind of felt off.
It is off. So
Okay.
I had my brother-in-law that died, 22 years ago. His wife had come home and I was sitting on the bed, and she really wanted to share something with him that to her was really exciting, but she wasn't sure she could. And I said, Tina, just tell him, he'll hear you. And how relieving that is to know that, you know, this man you've been married to for over 40 years could still hear you. That's important.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Susan, you can unmute and ask your question.
I really don't have a question tonight. I just have a thank you. After the first night and really talking about who's going to make decisions for you, it really, really got me thinking. And I started a conversation with a really good friend of mine last week, and told her that I was thinking about making a change and that I would really like her to be that person. And she said I'd be honored. And we sat there and cried, and now I'm crying again. But I really appreciate the fact that the things that you said were that you want somebody who will be an advocate, who understands what you want and is strong enough to pursue that. And
Yeah.
that's the person I think I found and I've chosen. So I still have to put it all together, but I just so appreciate that. I just want to say thanks.
You're so welcome. My pleasure. Make sure you have the conversation, take the 5 wishes with you. In fact, if you can get another one, maybe you could talk to her about her 5 wishes. Not that you should be her agent, but that you can do a conversation together.
Well, the fun thing is she knows what the 5 wishes are.
That's good. Maybe she has an advance directive. Maybe she has one.
She and her husband do. So yeah,
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
really good thing.
thanks.
It looks like, oh, Gail may have a question.
Hear me?
Gail,
I got it. Okay, I'm sorry. Your non-technical grandma here, Linda. I have a question regarding one of the items that's under number 4. Can you hear me, Linda?
I can
we
hear
can
you.
hear
Okay.
you.
Okay, and it's called, I wish to be visited by a chaplain or clergy. My question is there a protocol at the hospitals that, because sometimes your pastor comes and because he's not a member of the family, if he isn't registered there, they don't let them in. Recently, I was with a pastor and they had to go home and get a note from the family that, yes, he was a brand new pastor to the church. He wasn't a chaplain or a member of the Pleasant Valley Hospital, a group of chaplains. How do you, is there a protocol that hospitals have for a church assistant pastor or pastor to come if the family knows that the patient is not maybe going to make it?
No, actually, they would prefer that their pastor would come. Now, I'm going to
Right,
preface that, you know, the person that who is the spiritual leader in their life be the one that comes. Now, we have been through 2 years of different, right? We've been in a pandemic for 2
Yeah.
years,
yes,
and things have changed at the hospital off and on. There was a long period of time that nobody was allowed to come in, correct? And
yes,
so that would have included the chaplains or ministers unless they were at the point of, and even at the beginning, they weren't allowed in. And then only certain people were allowed in for a period of time.
right, exactly.
And so, and then we opened up more, and then Omicron came along and they closed down somewhat again. So it's a little confusing, but now they should be allowing the pastors and assistant pastors, a visitor to come in at this point. So why it would be turned away is beyond my understanding.
Uh-huh. Well, it was during COVID and it
So
was
it
serious.
was-
Yeah,
It was all related to COVID.
yeah.
I mean,
Well,
family members weren't even.
That's what we think. Yeah, I noticed it was on here and I know the chaplains come around that are already with the hospital. They come around and that they have 2 different types of chaplains that come around at both Pleasant Valley and St. John's, I know.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Mhm.
Looks like that's all the questions that we have for now.
That's okay. That's good.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. We will see you next week for our last session of the 5 Wishes webinar, and we will have more information about our upcoming Pulse seminar on March 29th. Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you, ladies. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.